All right. Good evening and welcome to the May 14th Board of Douglas County Commissioners 5:30 business meeting. Paper copies of the agenda are available for those who are here in person, and the full packet is available on our website. Reviewing our agenda, there are three items on our consent agenda. After our consent agenda, we'll have general public comment. We welcome general public comment for addressing issues not on today's agenda, but otherwise related to county business. Given our limited time and the need to have orderly and efficient meetings, we apply certain rules regarding public comments. We'll do our best to enforce these rules consistently and without regard to the point of view expressed by the speaker. Here are the rules. 1, each speaker is limited to a total of 3 minutes of speaking time. However, we'll accept public comment of any length in writing. 2, individual speakers may not donate unused time to other speakers. 3, all comments must address topics within the jurisdiction of the County Commission. And 4, we reserve the right to mute or remove any speaker whose comments are threatening, aggressively hostile, or belligerent. Campaigning for public office during the public comment period is not allowed. Please give your full name and address for our meeting minutes and address your comments to the Commission. Please also know that the comments received by the Commission during our meetings do not necessarily represent the views of Douglas County government, but we value your input. We don't usually respond to general public comments on the spot, but if you want to leave your contact information with county staff, we'll try and get specific questions answered. After our general public comment period, there are 2 items on our regular agenda. I'll just make a note. If you looked at our agenda earlier, there was only 1. We've added 1 tonight. For each action item, we'll hear from staff or the applicant, followed by questions from the Commission, and then open the item up for public comment relative to that item. Once public comment is closed, we'll bring the item back to the Commission for further discussion and a vote. If necessary, one of our items is for information only. Lastly, a recording of this meeting will be available on the county's YouTube page and website. We're going to start our meeting tonight with proclamation, and Commissioner Dorsey is going to do the proclamation for Mental Health Month. And then I think Patrick Schmitz is here to visit with, to present a little bit afterwards. Commissioner Dorsey.
Thanks. Whereas the U.S. Surgeon General states that mental health is fundamental to health, personal well-being, family, and interpersonal relationships, and contributes to community and society. And whereas the mental illness affects 1 in 4 Americans every year, regardless of age, gender, race, ethnicity, religion, or economic status. And whereas the U.S. Surgeon General has found that a range of treatments exists for most mental disorders, and the efficacy of mental health treatments are well documented. And whereas Douglas County, Kansas, has made a commitment to community-based systems of mental health care for all residents, and whereas the guiding principles of community mental health care have always been comprehensiveness, cost efficiency, effective management, and high quality and consumer responsive services, and whereas the Mental Health America, the National Council of Community Behavioral Health Care, and the Burton Ash Community Mental Health Center observe Mental Health Month every May to raise awareness and understanding of mental health and illness. Now, therefore, the Board of County Commissioners of Douglas County, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2025 of Mental Health Month in Douglas County, and call upon all citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools to recommit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of mental illness and the need for appropriate and accessible services for all people with mental illness. Adopted this 14th day of May 2025.
Thank you, Chair Kelly, Vice Chair Reed, Commissioners Willie, Anderson, Dorsey, Administrator Plinsky, and Assistant Administrator Jolicoeur, as well as Director of Behavioral Health Projects, Bob Tryansky, for the opportunity to be here and recognize Mental Health Awareness Month. As we approach the Burt Nash Center's Diamond Jubilee in July, we are celebrating 75 years of growing together and our collective commitment to nurturing growth and supporting behavioral health care in Douglas County, Kansas. None of this would have been possible without the invaluable partnership with the county, the dedicated team at the Burt Nash Center, and our generous community that champions behavioral wellness for all. Here are a few examples of the notable achievements we've seen at the center in the past year, achievements made possible because we are growing together and thanks to your unwavering support. The Treatment and Recovery Center team served 1,582 individuals in 2024. Our acceptance rate for referrals at the TRC is an impressive 99.9%, with 98% of our clients successfully transitioning back into the community. This achievement underscores our commitment to preventing hospitalizations and incarcerations by providing comprehensive community-based support for individuals in crisis. The mobile response team intervened in 743 crisis situations out in the community, marking a remarkable 80% increase from 2023. The team also followed up with post-crisis care outreach, resulting in a total of 1,272 community interventions. Additionally, I am proud of our new partnership with Lawrence Douglas County Public Health, which is helping us provide better health outcomes for our friends and neighbors. By leveraging our respective strengths, our two agencies are focusing on the holistic well-being of our clients and creating opportunities for solid care coordination between physical and behavioral health. However, the ongoing demand for behavioral health care remains significant, particularly due to the current crisis affecting our children and teens. Rising rates of suicide attempts and deaths highlight a dire need for accessible emergency psychiatric care for youth in Douglas County. To directly address this crisis, we are developing a new crisis center specifically designed for youth and families. In the coming months, you will hear more about the Judge Jean Shepherd Youth Recovery Center, the first facility of its kind in Kansas, dedicated to saving young lives and healing families. The simple fact is that many of our friends, family members, and neighbors need specialized behavioral health care, and an increasing number are struggling to afford it. Last month, 27% of our clients, a total of 696 individuals, were among the 240,000 Kansans who lack health insurance. These are individuals who do not qualify for Medicaid and cannot afford commercial insurance. As we face these challenges together, the Burt Nash has expanded our efforts to meet the rising demand for behavioral health care. With your continued support, we will work alongside individuals as they overcome their behavioral health challenges and return to their families, careers, and their fullest potential. We are profoundly grateful for Douglas County's partnership as we move forward on this journey of growing together. In front of you, I placed the 2024 annual report. It's a little bit larger than usual because it's our 75th year, and it talks about our history, but it also highlights a lot of the successes and achievements made because of your support and your commitment to helping our neighbors get access to behavioral health care. So thank you for that, and thank you for recognizing May as Mental Health Awareness Month.
Thank you, Patrick. And I see you have a photographer here. Yeah, he follows you everywhere. Jeff, did you want a photo? Yeah. We typically do. Usually down there. But we can come down there with you if you're like, I don't know. But this is a new space for us. How would you like to? There you go. Does that work, Jeff? We can get closer. Thank you. Happy belated birthday. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Commissioners, is there any item on the consent agenda that you'd like to have removed for further discussion? Not hearing any. Is there any item on the consent agenda the public would like to have removed for further discussion? Checking online, no one online. Okay, we'll bring it back to the commission for motion.
Commissioner Reed moved to approve 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Move on to general public comment. If you'd like to provide general public comment, we invite you to the podium. There's no sign up today, so just make sure you give us your name and address for our minutes.
I can tell. John Ems, Lawrence. So first, I'd like to say thank you for getting the homeless dashboard up and running. It's a big improvement. It will be informative. As I'm sure you know, there are many additions needed and some parts are broken, but it's a first step. Today, however, I'd like to share some citizen experiences on the streets of Lawrence. Perhaps because I talk about the homeless program here at the county quite a bit, I get messages about uncomfortable street encounters that have become all too prevalent from various county citizens. These encounters reflect the public perception regarding the homeless programs, so I think it's important to publicize them. Begging is virtually impossible to avoid while walking a couple of blocks or two on Massachusetts. You're hit up by men who are lying on the sidewalk or actually in the doorway of the businesses to which you want to go into, and with their hand up, they're out begging for money. This doesn't help either the businesses, and it certainly discourages customers. Less common but equally discouraging to downtown consumers are individuals who are actually in the streets, in traffic. They're not part of a parade. They're not part of an organized event. They're just individuals acting out. And it causes a certain amount of uncertainty regarding citizen safety when they're confronted by these individuals. I have met citizens who are unwilling to bring their children to the library, which is a shame because we have a nice library. In the past 3 days, a group of 30 third graders visiting Watkins Museum were confronted and frightened by a man aggressively yelling expletives. I don't have a solution to say. I mean, more police in the environment would be helpful. I certainly feel safe here today with our officers. I don't even know if these men are active homeless. At last count, there were 589 active homeless, according to the new dashboard. With a 20 million annual homeless budget, that works out to be $34,000 per active participant. Surely there's some dollars available to support the individuals who are wandering the streets. I also think that outcome data, which I've been lobbying for quite a while, outcome data regarding the status of the homeless services that are being offered and provided would be helpful. Thank you.
Any other further public comment? Anyone online, Sarah? Okay. We'll close public comment and move on to our regular agenda. And the first one is a presentation on the KU Gateway project.
Thank you, Commissioners. We've got representatives from the University of Kansas here to walk us through the presentation.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Jeff DeWitt. I'm the Chief Financial Officer
Hi,
for
Jeff.
the University of Kansas, and I want to walk you through the Gateway project, get your information on that, make you fully informed of everything that's going on. You've probably seen it in the paper, heard about it here and there, but I want to directly communicate to you everything that's going on so you're fully informed.
Jeff, make sure you're really close to that
Okay.
microphone.
got
It's a
it.
little
Oh,
hard to hear
Bring
you.
it right down here.
Yep.
There, is that better?
State your name again for our minutes.
Okay. I am Jeff DeWitt, Chief Financial Officer for the University of Kansas. And what I want to walk you through today is the Gateway Project and what that means, what it's all about, how we're doing it, the role the city, county, and state play in all this, and the benefits that it provides to all of us. What I want to show you is, I think this is all beneficial to the county. You'll obviously have your perspective. We can discuss that, and I'll show you why that we believe that. And what you see before you is a rendering from the developer of what this thing will look like when it's done. If you were to drive by there right now, and I drove through there today, you'll see it's all ready for graduation. So we will have our graduation there with a brand new humongous scoreboard. The field is ready. We're not ready to seat in there yet. They're going to be on this east side of the stadium, but it is ready for graduation and ready to open up in August for the first football game that's coming up. But that is not really just a football stadium. That is a multi-use stadium. It will do soccer and football. It's got a conference center on the far right-hand side at the top where you see that sticking out. And I'll show you a little bit more detail of that in a minute. We're planning on 200 events a year in this facility from many conventions and events. We've hired Oakview Group, who's one of the premier conference and event and stadium operators in the country. They just won the Las Vegas Stadium deal. So they do the big NFL and other colleges and things like that. They run McCormick Place in Chicago. So if you've ever been to a national conference in Chicago, that's the largest conference center in the United States. They are the operator of that. They're doing food and beverage right now at the Allen Fieldhouse. So if you've been to a game, you'll notice a difference in how food and beverage is treated there. So they are on board. Kurt Goodman is the general manager, and he's operating that. And one of the things they've told us and why this project is really important is that conference center, which is paid for by the state. It's an $85 million ARPA funds and other funds from the state, economic development funds from the state. And the stadium is really funded by donors and debt by the athletics department. I'll show you in a minute. The comment from OVG, who runs these all over the world and all over the country, is we can book 200 events there right now when it's done, but it's going to be local and regional because there's not the amenities nearby. There's not the hotel attached to it. And so they're not going to be people that are going to put heads in beds and be there every night. They're going to be more regional and local. You want the out of state, out of town people coming in that provide the real economic impact that tourism provides. You need to complete a development like this. And I'll get in a little bit more detail in a minute. The Tan building is a Marriott Hotel Cascade brand. Looks just like will be a similar brand to the one in the Plaza in Kansas City. Again, be a Marriott brand hotel. The brown area is resident housing, apartment style resident housing. If you look at the very front of the picture, you'll see that parking garage where you go underground to parking. So there'll be parking underneath the site. And then in the front of that is a plaza, a 20,000 square foot plaza. You can program for events as well. So this will be hotel, apartment, plaza, a really cool World War I memorial is being built into it. That will be on par with the kind you see in Washington, D.C. It'll be there's renderings coming out of that very soon that will be built into this as well, because that is originally a World War I memorial. That's what it was when it was built. It's the memorial stadium. And we're going to continue that tradition and take it to another level. So this has lots of impacts to it. And you'll also notice the stadium gets finished. So if you go there right now, you see the old part of the stadium. So the east side gets finished, that development happens. And Edgemoor Sunflower is the developer for this. And they are the developer that did the Kansas City Airport. So these are people that know how to do big projects. So we got Oakview Group as an operator and Edgemoor Sunflower as a developer in partnership with the university. And then the state, the county, and the city are all, going to be involved in this in some way. So let me walk you through this. That's the big picture. So here's what it will look like on August. It's a big deal. It's a $448 million project with a 55,000 square foot conference center and a highly renovated Anderson family football complex. And we'll start playing our football games and we'll start having events in there in August. But you notice there's just a parking lot there. There's no additional parking. There's no hotel. There's no apartments. We are in desperate need of more housing for our students. We will have a class coming in this fall, which may not be exactly as big as the last 2 years, but it will still be far bigger than it was pre-COVID. So we're going to hit another record of enrollment. And we need to make sure we have student housing to support that. And this provides that as well. So this is what it will look like in August if we don't do anything else. And it would be sad not to do something else and finish the project out and reach the full potential of that facility. So that's the visual. If you were to fly over it somehow, the drone or whatever, that's what you will see coming this August. And it kind of looks like that now, except all the construction site there. This is some of the elements that I talked about. It's a East Stadium is what phase 2 is completing the East Stadium. And it's important to complete the East Stadium because if you were to go out there and look, you'll notice that the old stadium is more horizontal and the new stadium is more vertical. When you build the new stadium in, you move the footprint in 80 to 100 feet. And moving that footprint in, that drip line on the stadium, gives you the ability to put this development in. It gives you the ability to build the underground parking. If you look at that black area on the top picture toward the bottom, that you can see where the underground parking garage is at. So moving the stadium over allows you to build this development. So that's important that we have to complete the stadium for that. Again, you'll get 162 full service hotels, 16 condominiums on top, 443 student housing beds, restaurant, office, and retail, 40,000 square feet of retail, restaurant, and office spaces, parking, 1,000 spaces replacing the 361 that the development will displace when it gets built where that current parking lot is. A gateway plaza, 20,000 square feet of a programmable space where the county, the city, the university could have events there if they so choose to do that. And it more than doubles the economic output of the facility because you're now making it where when people come to a convention, they got something to do. And a really important point that we have worked out with the city. By the way, I've met with Craig Owens every Monday since probably New Year's, something like that. So we have frequent discussions trying to make sure we make this a community benefit and link it to downtown. And you'll see in a minute, we want this to complement Mass Street, not compete with it. We want it to be something that you go there. And if you've ever been to a conference, you don't typically sit in your room the whole time you're there instead of a conference. You go out and visit. We want people to get out, go down on 9th Street, get down to Mass Street and enjoy the amenities in the cool town that we have here, the cool county we have in Douglas County and Lawrence. So we want this to connect and make sure we're doing all the things to do that. So that's the kind of the elements of that. Again, Edgemoor Sunflower, this is their proposal that we're trying to move forward with. Here's the retail and office space. And again, we've had lots of meetings with the downtown Lawrence business community as well. I don't know how many meetings we've had. I think this is my 37th presentation on this. So we've had lots of, some of my colleagues back here have done others as well, making sure the neighborhoods, the community, everybody knows what's going on. But this is from the developer, again, trying to show to them this is to complement, not compete. A KU type store, restaurant and retail will be in the hotel, and then it'd be an eat, play concept, that goes with the conference center, student focused market, office space. There could be a health services kind of element here because it's next to an athletics facility that may want to lease that. And this total about 40 to 43,000 square feet of retail and restaurant that go into this. Again, that's the plaza. There's nothing like that on the campus anyway, probably anywhere. That would be the plaza where people can meet and play and work and come to the conferences. And right in the back of that's where you get access to that World War I memorial. So that's the rendition view. The trees will take a little while to grow to that level, of course, but that's the picture of what we're looking at. This is again another look at the plaza. And so it's got culture and community benefits, entertainment and recreation, sporting events, concerts, entertainment options for residents and visitors, community gathering for local meetings in the conference center. Conference center will typically do about 500 to 1,000 size conferences is what we're looking at. So, if you're a hotel, you're worried about what this thing does. That it's a 162 room hotel with 500 to 1,000 people staying here. They got to stay somewhere else. So there's going to be room nights that go into the local community as well. And likely when this is successful, there'll probably be somebody considering building another hotel somewhere would be my guess, but we're not doing that. We're full here. So this is what we're trying to get going to get this work. It enhances the cases for our multi-use stadium. Again, we could have built a football stadium and had 8 games a year there, maybe some other events. We wanted this to be something that is multi-use, used year round, a benefit to the community and to the university. And that conference center linked together is rather unique in terms of anything you're going to see in a stadium like this. This is a very kind of a one-of-kind, unique type of stadium. And those poles you see going up, and you can see them when you go by, that's where the lighting is. Those are LED lights that go up the spine of that to light the stadium up. And you can change the colors of those and do all kinds of creative things with when you got an LED kind of light there. Again, the really important part is we are in a battle. I was at the Board of Regents most of the day today. And, we're all talking about the enrollment clip. There's less students that are going to be going to college in the coming years because there are less people born in 2008 and 2009. And we're in massive competition nationally for out-of-state students. And we have got record levels of out-of-state students that come here and in-state Kansas students. And one of the things is, what's the first impression you see of the university? Most students will drive up Mississippi Street and park in the parking garage there, go upstairs to the Union, and go to the Welcome Center. That's where the tours start at. This is going to be one of the first things they see. And so you'll see a shot here in a minute of what that looks like. This is my favorite picture of the rendering. That is the Campanile right through that middle of that. You can see the Campanile in the distance. So if you're a student and parents, probably junior in high school, right, driving up, first thing you're going to see is that Campanile through that. And that's where you're going to walk into that very facility to graduate 4 years later, or however many years later when you start. And you might stay in that hotel while you're visiting, and you might live in those residence halls while you're there. But this is a different view and a different impression, which is really important. Students are coming for experiences. We're in a massive recruiting battle with Colorado and Texas and Arizona and Nebraska and Missouri. Yes, I had to mention Missouri and all the other places that we're competing with. This is an important element to our recruiting strategy. It's an important element to our housing, and we're going to build another 600-bed, probably residence hall that complements this as well somewhere on campus, probably where the old Oliver Hall is. We're looking at that. And it's a conference center. So if I'm a 30 or 40-year-old, let's say 20 or 30-year-old person going to a conference, and I see that, and maybe someday later I have kids that are going to go to college, we want them to remember this. So we're going to be bringing people to conferences. They're going to get their first impression of the university in Lawrence and Douglas County. So this is a major recruiting tool beyond football and conferences and housing. It's a first impression and a big deal. It's going to be an economic center to complement Mass Street. Again, fully functioning conference center, high quality hotel, critical apartments, and then parking. The parking is designed to be what's necessary to support the development that's being built. So we've looked at that, had a parking study done, we have transportation study done, and we're looking at all those factors as we do this. One of the things, this is probably the most studied project in the history of Kansas, if not mankind, and I'll tell you why I say that. I am formerly the CFO of Phoenix, Arizona. So I was the CFO, I was in Phoenix for 25 years, and I was a chief financial officer for Washington, D.C. And so I've been on the other end of this thing the whole time, where you're the person talking to the developer and asking them questions and wondering whether they're treating you right or not. So from that perspective, I didn't want to go to the city and not know that what the developer was saying and what we were communicating was true and accurate and verified. So we hired Hunden Consultants, who the state typically uses for their star bond analysis. It's one of their top consultants. We've hired them from the very beginning, all the way from the beginning when this was being conceived, to guide us through to make sure the information we got is correct, accurate, and we can rely on it. Well, then the city, as we are approaching them, hires their consultant, Baker Tilly, who also looks at it. And then the state, because the state has to approve star bonds, has their own consultant. So there's 3 different consultants looking at this from 3 perspectives, and their numbers are all coming with $1 million or $3 million of each other. So there's lots of verifications, which you never get. You're typically hire your own, and you try to wonder whether the developer is giving you a hard time or not. We're a state entity, a university partnering with the city. That relationship's really, really important to us, which is why we spent all the time looking at it. So this is the what's called a economic study from Hunden and Associates. They use the same tool I use in Washington, D.C. with my staff when we were looking at the economic impacts of a project, and that their analysis, and we have all that data available if you ever want to get into the detail of it. It's $1.4 billion in net new direct spending for this project over 20 years, $550 million in indirect. So if somebody takes a job, but then they buy and eat downtown or buy something at the retail store, all that spin off. So it's almost $2 billion in economic impact. Net new earnings of $418 million, 430 full-time jobs over the 20 years. Incremental sales taxes to the city of Lawrence. So when you do a tax increment financing or community improvement districts or star bonds, you're capturing the increment that would not have occurred but for this project. But it also spins off, the hotel nights and all the things that go on with that. And some of the things like the dedicated taxes you all have and the city has, they do not get captured. You continue to collect those. So the incremental sales tax of the city of Lawrence before the project pays off is 27.8 million. And the county equivalent is 32.5 over 20 years. Increased property taxes. So one of the elements, none of that land is currently taxable because it's university property. So what we're going to do, we don't want to own a hotel. And I would probably quit if we owned a hotel because that's a bad thing for a city or a county or a state to own hotels. But what the issue is we're going to make that land, we're going to put it in endowments' hands so that it's then subject to property taxes. So what's going to happen as a result of this project is where the apartments sit, where the hotel set is going to forever be subject to property taxes. So you're going to get some property taxes while the project's going, and when the project's paid off, then all the property taxes will then come to the county and the city and the state. So this is going to, but during that period, in particular, schools are going to continue to collect taxes while the project's even going. So this is, again, I'm trying to demonstrate to you, there's not adverse impacts. This is actually a positive impact to the county from this project. This is one of the, I've got 30 some years of experience in Phoenix, Arizona, one of the fastest growing cities in America. Washington, DC, done projects downtown Phoenix, the wharf in Washington, DC. This is as complicated. It's not as big, but it's as complicated as anything you'll ever run into because it requires so many partnerships. Phase one has $248 million of donor money. This is unprecedented in terms of people willing to provide endowment funds to endowment donations to do the stadium. Kansas Athletic, because the stadium will generate so much money than the old one did, we had the least producing revenue stadium in the Big 12, if not probably all Power 4 conferences. It was just not, a World War I stadium is just not good at producing revenue. This one will generate a lot more, and that allows us to borrow to fund that. So the incremental revenue from the stadium allowed athletics to borrow $150 million to finish the project off. And then we got $85 million from the state. So that's a $448 million piece for what you're seeing. It's going to go live in August. Phase two, more donors, another $100 million of donations we're on the cusp of securing. Kansas Athletic is going to continue need to align it and coordinate it. We're going to be heavily involved, as I and all the people behind me are. Department of Commerce, we're asking for star bonds from the Department of Commerce, which is incremental sales tax revenue in the area where the district is defined. And then development partners, which is Edgemoor Sunflower, and I'll show you this in a second. They're going to build and pay for the hotel and the apartments. And then we're asking for economic development tools from the city of Lawrence because they would be the ones issuing those, which is the TIF, CIDs, and star bonds. And so that partnership, city, state, athletics, university, donors, is the only way you finish. We don't have the capacity to give our resources to this. We have many other things we need to be doing. If you can do it like this, then it's a home run. Here's looking at that in a little more detail. Phase one, $363 million of endowment and athletic debt, $85 million from the state. That's $448 million. Phase two, the developer is putting in $126.2 million. Donors, $100 million, excuse me. The state, the economic development tools, which will not only help build the necessary public infrastructure, the parking garage, the water, the stormwater system, the plaza, maybe parts of the stadium that are related. That is $99.7 million, which is the sum of all those tools. So this is a $750 million project. This is unprecedented for Douglas County and for the city of Lawrence, and its economic impact is unprecedented as well. This is a big, once in a lifetime type of project, which is probably why it's so hard to get all this pulled together. And when we started this, we had 3 developer proposals. We sent out an RFP to get some proposals. The first ones that came in were completely non-starters. We literally sent them all back and said, none of these work. We're not going to own the hotel. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. This is what we're willing to do. Come back. And what came back was that remarkable first picture you saw from Edgemoor Sunflower. It came back with a proposal. We're like, wow, okay, this is now possible to do. So it took 2 runs of even an RFP to get something that would work. These are the maps that are the Star Bond District, the Community Improvement District, and the tax increment financing. So Star Bonds are the net new sales taxes generated within that site go to pay off the debt for bonds issued for the project. And you see it's a little irregular, little holes in it everywhere. You take student housing out, that's really complicated in Star Bonds. So the student housing's pulled out of there. The other one, the blue one, which is a community improvement district, doesn't cover what's called the crossing, which is near on the other side of the campus, because it's already a community improvement district, so you can't do it twice. So that's pulled out of there. And then the TIF is only property taxes, so it's only the net new property area that's going to be taxable, which is where which is the Gateway site itself, where the hotel and the apartments are at. Like I said, Craig Owens and I are becoming very acquainted with each other as a city manager, as all of his staff and us, our team, as we meet regularly with them. And, one of the things that I find very important, having been on the other side of the aisle, so to speak, these things are not successful if the developer just does it and walks away. They're not successful if there's antagonistic relationships with the community where you're putting them. And the reason why you see so much success and things like this in Phoenix is those were always partnerships. So we strongly believe in making sure that this is a partnership with the city. So you'll see we're asking for their commitment to financing. And one of the challenges they have is funding the JAC watershed, which is a stormwater project in that area. And so the tools here will help fund that $14.5 million stormwater project, which, the thing sits on top of it. So that's appropriate. Affordable housing is obviously a big issue that we all have concerns with, including ourselves as a university. We want to make sure we can house our students and give them a good experience, and also not have it be pressure just solely on the community. And so we're committing to an effort to provide some land transfers in about $4 million to the affordable housing support. They can build affordable housing on it. They can sell it, whatever they choose to do. So we're working through that with endowment, the university endowment, both on property throughout the state, and seeing where that might be appropriate. And then we're going to establish an off-campus housing office so that students, when they come in and they live off campus, they don't just, hey, I'm done with my freshman year. Hallelujah. I don't have to live in the residence halls anymore. And they want to go in the community. There's actually a resource for them to help them find the housing, navigate that, be a good citizen with the landlords, be a good community member. So we're committing to that as well. And then transportation, one of the things that's important is if they're staying in a hotel, we want them to come downtown. So working on that transportation access and delivery to move people from the site when they're at an event, whatever it is, to get them downtown. We're also going to work with the city on that. So these are some of the key elements that are in that memorandum of understanding, which will end up in a development agreement at some point whenever we get to the point before this project goes forward. These are the key dates that they have. They voted May 6th, and it was approved. The Star Bond and the TIF was, CAD comes later. That's the state process is different for each of these tools. And we had a second reading last night, and it passed again last night. So that is moving, and that's the map. So the first step is the maps, and you got to take the plan forward. They have to approve the plan, and then they have to approve issuance. It's a very complicated and multiple step process to do these. So there'll be a July and August hearing. And for your perspective, if you have major issues or concerns about this, under the statute is if you have those, get those to the city by January 6th. Is that right? Yeah. June 5th. I'm sorry, June 5th. June 5th, or to let us know so we can address them as well. Again, from my perspective, but I'm completely biased because I've been on this side of the aisle too long. This is a win for everybody from my perspective in terms of what it provides to everyone who's here. And this is the last slide. And this is again a picture of the plaza. And as our comment to the city is approving the economic development tools provides a state with the once in a generation transformational economic development project that's going to benefit the city, Lawrence County, and state. It's getting a conference center here that can bring other people money. That's what I used to say when I was in Phoenix and Washington DC. When you can bring tourism money in, then then it helps you with your tax base because they're coming in, they're spending their money and they're leaving, but they're leaving their money. That's the important part. So tourism could be a very powerful tool. And, I've been here 4 years. I left Washington DC 4 years ago and came here March of 2021. It was cold. I was like, why am I here? It's really cold, but I love it here. I grew up in the Midwest in Southern Illinois. So it's like coming back home again for me. And I've had 3 kids that went to college, went through all the tours that parents do whenever they're sending their kids to college. I really, truly believe, and I say this sincerely, this is one of the coolest college towns in the United States. And so we want to preserve and strengthen that status as one of the best college towns in the country. And I think this is that element that puts a university over the top on that and gives the community an asset to do that. And so that's the Gateway project. It's why I and others believe so strongly in it and believe in the benefit of it. And I'd be glad to answer any questions you have, or if you have some concerns, again, we want to hear those because we want to address this as a partner with the political bodies and with the state. We meet with the Commerce Department as well, and the city and you all as a county. So thank you for having me today, and be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have questions?
A question. Could you revisit the property tax piece that you mentioned before? So I made what sounds like maybe a false assumption that that none of this land would generate property taxes, but I heard you say otherwise about specifically the hotel, conference center and hotel site. And did you also say the student housing? Or did I
So
misunderstand?
right now it's university property, so it's not subject to property tax. As part of this project, what we'll do is we will transfer that land to endowment, which then will make it, and then when there's private development on it, that then makes it subject to property taxes. So we're gonna make it on the property tax rolls as part of the strategy to make this project work. It's because we want the private development to do it, and to do that, they're gonna have to pay property tax.
Got it. But am I correct in that it's just, I mean, it's parts of the site, not necessarily the whole, because like the stadium, for example, is still only going to be generating tax revenue and I presume would continue to be owned by the university directly. But the hotel conference center would be what's transferred to endowment. Am I tracking?
So what the developer would have is probably a 99-year lease for the hotel and the apartments. That makes it subject to property taxes. That's a part that would be subject to property taxes. The stadium and the conference center would be university owned.
Okay, so the conference center is distinct from the hotel, and then when you're talking about the apartments, you're talking about those 16 condos that would be the
I'm
like,
talking about
top of
the whole hotel, the 160.
right? And but there's also units for ownership or on the top level, right?
Be
Okay.
subject to property tax.
So that's separate from the conference center, and then obviously the student housing remains university and is not
No,
part
they
of
would
what
have
would
the
be.
developer on that too.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
they would be
misunderstood that.
subject. The housing and the hotel would be property tax.
How does that is that similar for other student housing around
No.
campus right now? I was gonna say, I wouldn't have
Yeah,
assumed that.
so this is common in other universities.
Hmm.
We can master lease it. They could own it and we would agree to operate it. All these, we can't really move forward till we know we have the funding and all the things in place. So I can't really negotiate with the developer, but the concept is for them to have ownership. We don't have the resources to buy it. I've got authority from the state to do some borrowing for student housing, but I need it for another 600 rooms. I can't build 600 and buy that too.
Got it.
So it's likely they're going to be the owner.
Okay, thanks for the clarity.
I had a question on phase 2 timeline. Have you got that put together yet?
We do. It all depends on how fast this goes. So assuming the best case that we can get the city to move to do the financing by the end of the year, we could start tearing down the east side of the stadium at the end of this coming football season, like in December, and then begin the process to build the other side back and build the rest of the development. So you could start construction at the earliest, the end of this calendar year, and with completion in about 2 years. It'd take about 2 years to build this. The timing of that is all subject to steel and ordering and all those types of things. But the goal would be best case to start construction at the end of this year.
So if things go as planned, you would be under construction during the World Cup event.
Well, we're working that out too. So that is another issue is how do you do it and keep your benefit of the World Cup? So you've nailed another challenge of the development, which is I'm glad we have somebody who did the airport that can, do something complicated because we also have the World Cup we want to deal with while we're doing it. So though you just showed another element of complexity of this project.
One other question under your transportation issue. Have you ever considered maybe taking some of the endowment land at the Lawrence Airport and doing a swap with the city on that?
That could be one of the items we look at. That's we do on land there. So that we're looking at every option we have, and we haven't laid out all our land holdings and had that discussion yet, but that is, you're clearly aware we own land out there too. Yep.
Thanks.
Yep. Thank you.
You mentioned that some of the county sales tax would be impacted and some of the county sales tax would not. Can you expound on that?
So right now there's nothing, and if there's no project, there would be nothing. So when you do TIFs, you can't take dedicated taxes, even if they're taxable. So like your schools and some of your other dedicated taxes, those cannot be subject to a TIF. So those are going to be generated no matter what. So that's what the numbers come in from the where we showed you the county impact. So when you do a TIF, and it's the same way on a star bond, the city has a 1.55% tax, but 0.55 of it is dedicated to voter. Those can't go into a TIF. So those get generated all the way through anyway. So it is the dedicated part that you cannot assess whenever it's going. And then whenever the project pays off, and one of the reasons why we have the star bond and CID district so big is there's lots of undeveloped property on the campus. If you go to 15th and Castle all the way up to the university, that is all university or endowment land. Anything that develops on there during the next 20 years, we don't have that accounted for. That goes to pay it off early. So it's attractive to a investor who wants to buy these, because they'll say, wow, anything they do anywhere development wise is going to go to pay that off early. So it's probably going to pay off well before 20 years. And as soon as it pays off, all that revenue comes to the jurisdictions immediately. Did I answer your question?
Actually, Jeff, I'm going to turn to Sarah to kind of parse through some of the dedicated tax versus not dedicated tax. Can you give us an outline of that?
For the county, that would be the behavioral health sales tax would not be included. So that would still be collected because that's a dedicated tax.
And the 1% sales tax we use for capital projects, that would be?
That's part of the countywide tax that is shared with the cities. So that would be what is not would not come to us.
Okay.
It would
Thank
be
you.
collected and it will be sent
Mhm.
to them to pay off the project.
Okay. Thank you.
Just the increment.
It's
Yes.
just, so one of the things on a star bond and a star bond in particular, whatever you're collecting now, you continue to collect for the whole period. It's only the increment due to the success of the project that gets impacted.
I have another question.
Sure.
You mentioned that the school board had opted out of some of this. Did they intentionally opt out, or were some of those dedicated?
That's by statute, school districts, you cannot take that increment when it's collected. So the school taxes will continue to come forward.
The property taxes from the TIF or the sales tax from the star bond?
The property taxes from the TIF that go to schools will continue to go to them.
Thanks.
That's the 5.7 on the one slide that showed you the amounts continue to go to the schools.
Jeff, thanks for your presentation. Do you have any data on how much taxes you're collecting in when you look at this community improvement district, how much sales tax are you collecting now in that space? This is sort of unique in that it expands it into a currently existing space.
Yeah, so the CID, you're talking about the CID.
Mhm.
CID is an additional 2% tax. And we collect, do you have that number, Heather? We'll get that for you. We'll get you what the 2% collects, which gives you a feel for what.
But the 2% is on top of what's
Correct.
currently collected,
Correct.
correct?
So
Okay.
anything in that district has a 2% tax that goes toward the project, which is about, I think it's $18 million, Heather. $18 million that's collected. Well, you're able to finance $18 million worth of improvements from that.
Okay. I think one of the interesting things about this that was sort of outside of my experience with CIDs and TIFs, what was this memorandum of understanding with the city? Can you give us some perspective on why you thought, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a CID project or TIF that the developer came with this enhanced package of things to the city.
That's a city, that's a university doing that. I'm not sure I mean, so here's the reason why. We want to continue forward, but if this doesn't pass, the project doesn't happen. So one of the things you do in a analysis is you do what's called a but-for test. But for this incentive, would the project happen anyway? You should never approve a CID, TIF, or STAR bond if they're going to build it anyway. I can tell you definitively, we're not building it if we can't get these, because that gap, that $99 million gap is unpluggable by us. We've tapped our donors out. So from our perspective as a city, we wanted the city to commit. They got 3 more steps to take. So if we're going to continue forward tomorrow, talking to the developer and paying for all the things that you have to do to get the student housing, we want to know the city is committed to the concepts of this deal. So that is our ask, is an MOU and an agreement between the two parties that, and it also is their ask as well, right? They want to know what they can get to help them, what we can. It's a unique tool we're using in a partnership. It is not normal. You'll probably never see another one. Typically, you'll do these projects and then you do a development agreement and then you finance them. We're in a long discussion and we don't want to stop the project and wait to see whether this all passes or not. We want to know whether there's a commitment or not, because if we wait, then it's another year before it's done and it's another increase in cost for the project. It's another year of a conference center running at half its capacity. So it's really a tool to build a relationship with the city so we know we can continue to move forward. Does that answer your question?
It does, but it begs another question. In your but-for analysis, how was the county excluded in that analysis? We have certain services that we provide in partnership with the city of Lawrence, and particularly I'm thinking about fire and medical. The 200, you said 200 events per year will certainly put a stressor on our current resources, and we're below response times now where we want to be. Was the county considered in any of that discussion at all?
This is the first contact
Okay.
with you, right?
Mhm.
So that if that is a concern, that's something we want to see what we can do to address it. So the MOU that is there is if you listen to the committee meeting, there were several citizens. It's non-binding. Well, it's a discussion that we're having for, documenting, I don't know how many meetings every Friday since January of where we are in progress. And there'll be discussions between now and then and the next vote. So the question is, what is the impact of that? And what can we do to ameliorate it, so to speak? I don't know the answer to that. It's a common, having done these again in some really big cities, 5th and 20th largest cities in the country. You do too many TIFs, you have no net new revenue to do the services. That is a common thing here. But there is money flowing here. So one of the things that I say to you, and we can show you there, you are going to get more money as a result of this project in your coffers from all the activity that spills out of this in terms of all the economic development activity that comes out of this. So the question is, of all the revenue you're going to get out of this, does that help us? Because we want good response times too, right? I mean, so this is a partnership type of thing. So maybe we should sit down and talk about, where the money's coming into you beyond, because this is a project that lifts everybody, the state, the city, and the county, and the university. And the question is, does it put more burdens than lift? I think it puts a lot more lift than burdens, but that's something we can chat about.
Okay, thanks.
So I was also going to ask about that. If you followed our discussion that we had around the KU crossing and the tax incentives that package that went forward for that, we had a long discussion about fire medical response, where medical is the main kind of utility, if you can say that, that the county provides within the city limits. And we're already talking with our partner, the city, about station expansion and station placement. And there's a lot of those conversations that are really active at the moment. So my question is, at what point does the fire department get to be, LDCFM specifically, get to be part of this conversation in terms of the timing of, here's the added need, later on we'll have the added revenue?
So you're going to see revenue come out. Conferences will happen as soon as it opens, probably toward the end of the year. The conference center will open a little bit later than the stadium. So are you asking the question of from the city's perspective or from the county's perspective?
Well, I would start with the county's perspective when that, in medical response being that main thing. So you're talking about, a very large volume of people from out of town with, additional medical needs. And that's the discussion that I'd love to see our leadership with LDCFM being part of the conversation for, do they understand the additional work that's coming with the proposal, and how does the increase of that need time with the revenue that then comes with it from both the city and the county?
Well, that's now number one on the item to talk with Craig about next Friday. So it's a great point.
Could I expand you to maybe it's a shared governance agreement on our fire and medical? So maybe to include our county administrator in that discussion as well?
Sure, glad to.
Okay, thank you.
More the merrier. So, no, again, having lived on the other side, partnerships are incredibly important for successful projects. And you have poor response times at a conference because there's inadequate resources, or you have a bad experience when you come downtown. I want these people to come and then immediately book their next 5th year from now when they rotate to come here again. So we want them to come here over and over and over again, not come one time. The experience matters.
And I just mentioned, this conversation shouldn't be a surprise at all, because we were on the record for the KU crossing as having that discussion. And even a quick conversation with our staff, I think, would have brought that forward as an issue that we just, and it's not that there necessarily needs to be dollars attached to that conversation, but there's planning that attaches to it.
We will be partnering with the neighborhoods, with you, with the city, with the businesses, and, coordinating all that. So we want this to be, I really mean, we want this to be a community asset. So yes, we'll engage immediately with your county commission or your county staff to have those discussions.
I would just expand on that just a little bit more or maybe try and put a point on, we've had some discussion over the years, and I think there's been recent development around LDCFM having some formalized agreements with the
LDCFM is.
Lawrence Douglas County Fire Medical.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
That they have some formalized agreements with the university around requests for special event personnel being at
Okay.
special event,
Yeah.
which has historically happened, but not necessarily with compensation always. That's changed, which is great. And this is, the special events like games and other potential celebrations are one thing, but to Commissioner Willie's point, up to 200 events a year that could be bringing in hundreds of additional people at a time, like it impacts our dispatch center first, which is who would be dispatching LDCFM too. So I don't know that that's a huge part of the equation, but just to put a point on that's a piece of the infrastructure that the county provides that, for planning purposes, knowing when there's large influxes of people, because, having that communication around events calendars and things when there's going to be hundreds and thousands of new people beyond football and basketball games, which we're all used to in this community.
Yeah, a lot of those 200 events are going to be 500-person conferences, not overly big, but some of them are going to be, a concert here and there and things like that, to make your point. Heather Blank, who's here behind me today, one of the elements is who runs the stadium. Does athletics run the stadium? Because this is not an athletics facility. It's the chancellor's office. And Heather Blank, what's your title?
Vice Chancellor.
She's a vice chancellor of Gateway, but that's not her title. But she is full-time committed to this project, along with Kirk Goodman, who's the general manager for OVG. And the reason for that is The reason why we have a full-time person that reports, she reports to me and I report to the chancellor, is we want it to come from the university leadership. That partnership's important. And when you have an athletic department overseeing these in other places, you know, do you get to have that concert 2 weeks before the next football game? And that football coach says no. Well, I'm sorry, it's bringing in some money to help you run the university. So that you just got overridden. The athletic director may not be able to do that, but I'm not bashful about it. So, or is Heather. So it is going to be a chancellor-led, fully dedicated person to all elements of this. We've never done this before. So you're bringing up questions that are great, and I'm glad we're here to talk to you. We've never run a multi-purpose stadium before, neither is athletics, but OVG has, right? So that's why we contracted it out. We've never dealt with all the issues this may cause, but we got to be in constant dialogue and partnership to make sure we make it work.
Can I ask about the sales tax base? So I know that the STAR district starts with, you know, here's the sales tax base from the last 12 months, if I'm right, from watching the city meeting.
Mhm.
I'm curious, within the district that we're looking at here, do we feel like there was a abnormally low sales tax within that 12 months because of not having football games in the stadium here? What kind of impact have you seen from
That's
that?
a great question. And by statute, you don't get an option here. The statute says go back 12 months. It happened to be a period when the stadium we were playing in, you know, Sporting KC and other places. We looked at that. That's about $230,000 a year. It's not a major. That was such a poor performing sales tax stadium, even when we were filling it up. That's the impact that we will be discussing. But we don't really. The statute says go back 12 months, and so the question is all the other benefits that are coming from that way outride that base change. One of the other ones that you may have heard on there is, well, geez, you're placing a Dillons that was over here and you're putting it on the site. Well, that's cute. You're going to get all that taxes from the new Dillons. There's actually in statute the ability to say if you relocate something, you take the base out of what it was making wherever it was, and you can't count that. So we're making sure that we early on have appealed to the state to allow that exception to be done. But it's a 12-back roadmap from the date, and that's how. I don't really want to go to state legislature.
I think that was one of
We'll
my.
wait another 3 years before we get the project going,
Yeah,
right?
that was one of my next questions, so I appreciate you covering that. So the tax increment, which, you know, for the TIF district, I understand that one, and for the STAR with the sales tax, the increment issue there. With the community improvement district, that is an additional 2% sales tax on that district for the period of 20 years, is that
Yes.
correct?
Or until they're paid off, which if they get paid off earlier, then
And-
they would,
and you
whenever
mentioned-
it's paid off, it ends.
And you mentioned that the KU Crossing is part of that other community improvement district. Is that 2% also?
No, if you look at the map, the crossing's excluded because
If
we
they-
wouldn't put a CID on top of a CID.
The previous
Uh,
CID from the crossing, is that a 2% or is that a different amount?
Oh,
I don't think that.
One and a
the
half. I
crossing-
think it's 1.5.
Yeah, 1.5.
1.5?
and this one is actually 1.5 for 5 years and goes up to 2 in the 6th year. So this one actually scales up. So, but 1.5 is what the one in the crossing is.
So that's really the only piece that is, you know, a new expense, I suppose. I mean, everything
Mhm.
else is capturing the increased and, you know, tax base. So who's expected to kind of bear the burden for that additional, are those, you know, students and families and alumni and such that are within those districts?
So it's an additional sales tax, obviously is what it is. And so when you buy something inside there, you're going to pay an additional tax for the benefit of the project. The project doesn't happen but for that. So that's how we're looking at it, is the benefit of all the amenities and all the things this provides to the campus. That's the price of doing that.
So room rates at the hotel plus the student apartments and the student dorms?
The hotel's excluded. Hotel's excluded from it.
Okay, but the rental rates on the apartments and the student dorms, do those?
Apartments subject to sales tax? I don't think they are.
Sales tax.
I
Okay.
don't think they're subject, yeah,
Yeah,
they're
they
not
pay
subject. to-
sales tax.
Yeah. It'd be the retail in the store below the apartments would be, yeah.
Any other questions, commissioners?
I do want to expand on the CID thing though, because the map is a little bit tricky, even though I'm a townie and I like to think I know the layout of streets pretty well. It's a little hard at this scale. But does it include the retailers that are in the Memorial Union currently?
Yes.
And then retailers along Ninth Street, both sides of Ninth Street?
The
And that,
here side of Ninth Street's not in the district, that's not in the university, so it wouldn't include them.
okay, gotcha.
across the
I'm just
street.
trying to think of all the sort of examples of, it's the Cork and Barrel there and no, it doesn't go that far. So you're just saying, and, okay, so just and there was a note about
Like
the
Allen
Oriad.
Fieldhouse
being-
area, the stadium
Yeah,
area.
the Oriad.
Oriad's-
Union. University property only.
Okay,
Yeah,
Got it.
only university, those maps, if you were to, you put the crossing in the CAD, that's the university owned. That's the university footprint. That's what
just
that-
that line. Okay, thanks for clarifying.
You guys have really good questions. This is like the most questions I've ever gotten. I've done a lot of them.
And we're still going. So I have one, and I know that at the city meeting, you had, folks from downtown business owners and downtown Lawrence to come and speak at that. We didn't get the same treatment.
I
here.
don't
We'll
know.
See if they're perhaps online. But I'm just curious how you contrast the need and the want to connect to downtown with that kind of eat, play, shop mentality of that particular district that you're building. How do those interplay together?
You're talking about what was the reactions to our discussions? I'm sorry, could you ask the question again?
Yeah, so you mentioned that like this area that you're building is supposed to kind of be an eat, play area, hang out, have community events, but also wanting to connect to downtown. So how does that tension work out?
Well, that's where you have to be in constant dialogue with the downtown business community. Downtown Lawrence, we've talked to them how many times? Many times. And it is showing them the kind of concepts we're looking at and getting them comfortable that we're not trying to compete with them. We're trying to complement them. And I think it's about how we work out how we get people downtown. So, we'll be working with the Marriott hotel owner and saying, we want to get transportation down there, or working with the city over time to make sure it's walkable, easy, safe, walkable down to Lawrence. But that is, some people would say, well, geez, that's newer. That's not fair. Well, this is going to lift everybody. We're going to be bringing people down. And I've never been to a conference that I went to that I stayed on the site. At least I haven't. I don't think anybody does. You travel to the community. They'll hopefully be going to the lakes, and going to the recreation areas that the county has, and going downtown and all the things. You get them here and you get them here for a week. They're gonna go out in the community and spend money, and they're not all gonna stay in our hotel because it's not big enough. So that's the dialogue we're having, getting them to understand the concepts of we've never had anything like this here. We never had a conference center. We never had a facility where you can bring people in a way that they've never happened before. It's not just coming to see a football or basketball game. It's coming for other things. And it's coming there to see the university, maybe someday wanting to send your kids there.
And I know kind of in the order of operations, you kind of have to know what you're moving forward with before you can kind of make some of those plans for like, how does that transportation work connecting downtown? But what's the timeline? Like, how are you involving like downtown business owners in that conversation based on like when these other approvals are happening?
So we've been dialoguing with them well before we did our first meeting with the, I don't know how many meetings we've had, but we've had many neighborhood meetings and many downtown business meetings. We're dialoguing with them before the first time we ever even stepped into the council, the commissioners' chambers, last week. And now assuming we get approval and the funding we know it's going to happen, we're just starting the negotiation with the developer about what the project is, what all the details. The hard part hasn't, as I told Heather, the hard part hasn't started yet. The hard part is negotiating, what's the transportation? When are the events? When do they shut down? What kind of events do you go get? How do you coordinate with the city of Lawrence and the county now that I know all these things how do you do all that coordination? That's why there's a full-time general manager on site, right? To work with Heather on all that. So we haven't started negotiating the final product. We know what it looks like, but the devil's in the details. And it's knowing things that you're bringing up, and it's knowing things we're learning from the downtown Lawrence business community. We're learning from the weekly meetings with the city, from feedback you give us. that helps us negotiate a good deal with the developer on behalf of all of us. But again, they got to make money or they're not going to do it, right? So it's that push-pull of how do you let them create a great asset, but in a way that we all benefit from. So it never stops if you do this right.
I have a related question, and then I swear I think this is the last one I've got on my list for the moment. So we heard from neighbors and neighborhood groups, and also students and faculty about just being involved in the conversation. And I know what kind of rose to the top from the neighborhood was parking and noise, and I think all those things are part of the discussion. But kind of what's your process moving forward to make sure that you're engaging those voices?
So we will have more meetings, and we have a parking study we've completed. We are going to continue to meet with them through phase 2. So those meetings will continue forward. Parking is always, every single one of these I've done, parking is the number one. It's what about the parking? It's not what about what's going to happen. It's what about the parking? And, we discussed a lot with the parking solution. You saw the 1,000 units up there. We know from comments we've gotten and from looking at everything, we're going to have a shuttle from the lead center to the development in the early stages. And we have additional parking challenges on the campus that we need to address, particularly in the more central part of that. So we're just going to keep engaging, but you'll never make everybody happy about parking when there's a football game going on, right? That's just, I want to make everybody happy, but I've been doing this too long to know that that's not possible. But you try to be reasonable, and you try to listen, and you try to understand, and you try to ameliorate those issues. And in some cases, it's parking enforcement in concert with the city that you have to talk about. We are doing this this is going to bring revenue to the university too. So this is a revenue generator, not just a gateway and all these types of things. If I go to a conference and I have a bad parking experience, I'm not coming back, right? So we have an incentive to make it work as well. If I have a bad interaction with the neighborhood, I'm not coming back. If I have a bad experience downtown, I'm not coming back. If I have an event and I need medical services and it doesn't come, I'm not coming back, right? So all these issues are our incentive to make this a really successful project. I want them to come back over and over and over again.
Yes, I think we want the same thing. Okay, any other questions, commissioners? Okay, this is a general business item, so we'll take public comment on this item. If anybody would like to provide public comment, come on up. We may have questions later,
Right,
Jeff.
thank you.
John Eames, Lawrence, as I think the only unaffiliated citizen taxpayer in the room, I think I have to say, I did say unaffiliated. I think I have to at least comment. I was in the meeting where the city of Lawrence suddenly woke up and realized they were $6.5 million out of budget, out of pocket. And they decided that they were going to reduce police services and cut the fire department by shutting down the ladder truck in Station 5 and reduce the ambulances. And that was the same meeting where they were interested in the STAR bonds. So they're spending money at the same time realizing they didn't have any. I was also in this meeting when the fire department showed up and asked you for an extra $1 million, I believe, to recover some of their capability. So I would hate that we're in a situation where I know this, the adage that you have to spend money in order to make money. Okay. But the Ali effect, where I'll gladly take a hamburger today and pay you for it tomorrow, is ringing through my head. No offense to KU, but just wanted to represent the taxpayer. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Anyone online, Sarah? Okay, this was information only. We are not taking any votes on this tonight. I think yeah.
Do we get to keep going, or
What's that?
are you?
Oh, do you have
wrapping this up?
comments?
Yeah.
Sure.
That's all
Yeah.
right. Okay. I just, I can give a little overview and then maybe somebody else can speak it a little bit better. But the idea of the tax increment and the but for, like, these aren't dollars that city and county pay out for these projects. These are dollars that are increasing revenue to the city and county, school district, et cetera. And a portion of that addition, because right now we get zero tax dollars out of the district that we're talking about, the tax increment financing district that we're talking about, that currently is zero. So the idea is if something is built there, then there's a great deal of revenue that comes with that. In the meantime, a portion of that is allocated to help the project move forward, finance the project, and then that gets paid off and it all comes on the tax roll. So if somebody else wants to say that more eloquently, I'd be glad to entertain that. But that's, as a tool for economic development, I've been very comfortable with that. Within that, there are still a lot of details that get worked out in terms of, often we're not talking about, 100% of that increment. We're still capturing some of that for things like increased fire response and those sorts of things. So I'd say we've had a lot of questions tonight, but that tool as a basic tool is something that we have, that the commission has supported in the past and that has real usefulness.
Thank you, Commissioner Willie. I appreciate that. It's an important clarification and agree. I also do want to note that, of course, you were talking and I kept listening to you and the thought that came to my brain. No, it's okay. I just have to search back for it. Oh, I do want to make sure we make a point, or that I make a point of saying in this discussion, as we have in many other discussions around community improvement districts and TIFs and rural housing incentive districts and such before, that there is a cost to the county in terms of the personnel resources and the staffing that it takes to really manage pretty intensive and complex taxing processes, as the tax collector and tax dollar disperser to all the other tax collector or taxing authorities in the county. All of that administrative burden and resource intensity does fall to the county. So I don't mean to say that I think that tips the scales much in terms of the potential return on investment and value that will come to increase our tax base in the future. But it is a cost to the county that we have to consider, and I think is important for us to just always make a point of saying in these discussions that every time, this is an example of something that that the city is voting on, but there is an administrative cost to us in that process. And just want to note that that's something we should be aware of and mindful of, and as we continue to sort of add these to the list and overlaying districts and maps that our county appraiser's office and other parts of our county, many departments in our county have to manage and navigate.
Thank you. And I don't know if Sarah wanted to run through like what those costs and burdens are on the county. We've talked about that in the past in a study session.
I mean, it's a long conversation, but specifically with tax increment financing districts, there's no software program that manages these effectively. So these are hand calculated by our tax team, and then they're they're verified internally to make sure that they're accurate. But it's a very labor intensive process as we layer more and more of these on, and will eventually require us to add more staff.
And so with any of these projects, the county doesn't get a vote on any of this. Is kind of if we have issues, we should bring them by June 5th to the conversation between the county and between the city and KU. But other than that, like, that's outside of our purview to get an actual up-down vote on any of this. Would that be correct?
Well, you could vote to veto it, from what I understand of the TIF, if you wanted to.
Thanks.
But it's not a vote to approve, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, I appreciate my commissioners' thoughts. This is better than the crossing project. The crossing project came to us very last minute with, I think, some lack of understanding about what our role was. This is progress, but I would still ask, and maybe it's to our friends at the city when someone comes with a TIF or a CID to engage the county earlier. We've had other projects. I'm thinking of a rural development project in Eudora where they've been coming for years talking to us about it. So we're very aware of that. And I think that helps some of the things that maybe surprised you this evening or that maybe you hadn't considered before. Anything we can do as a community to not forget about the county. I think a lot of times what happens is the services that we provide, excuse me, ran out of gas there. And the services that we provide are very under the radar and people don't, like one we haven't talked about is emergency management, right? We've talked about emergency communications. That's a county funded thing that if we are having concerts and big events, that it's going to impact our county emergency management staff. So I don't think any of these, as Commissioner Reed said, becomes a deal breaker for me, but I would think in the expression of partnership to come on the front end and involve our staff as much as possible. That would be the only direction that I would have at this point is to involve Sarah or her designee in some of those meetings that you're having with the city, especially around fire and medical. I think that's my biggest concern. KU has a high expectation of fire and medical response that comes from Lawrence and Douglas County. I think as we see higher and higher costs, especially when it comes to expanded services, and we're looking at station expansion, I think it could cause a broader, bigger conversation with the university that's really not just about Gateway, it's about the whole deal and the number of properties that we have, whether you're talking KUIP or the Lead Center or a number of those that are not property tax generating and yet require services. So I think that's just a bigger conversation.
I had a question. You say that the conference center will be opening soon. Do you have any forecasts of how much more sales tax that will generate once that opens? Because you're bringing in 500 people that are spending money that aren't currently here.
The conference center will likely open toward the end of the year, late fall probably. It will tail the stadium opening up. We'll be working on that when the stadium opens up in August. I don't have that off the top of my head, but we could pull that for you. It really depends on the booking from OVG, and they're doing that now, so we can't book until the date is going to open. So booking is going to be more in 2026. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you want to come up and she has the numbers. I'll let her explain what she knows.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So these are estimates based on their pro forma, but
Can you give us your name?
sure. My name's Heather Blank. I'm the Vice Chancellor of Strategic Growth Initiatives and Real Estate for the university. And God, I don't have my glasses, so, I'm squinting. For the conference center, we're estimating just over $1 million in year one while we're ramping up. And it runs up from there and finally levels out around 4 to 5 million in years 10, 11, 12. Over the span of the entire time, the 20-year period that this measures, I think it's 58 million in total for the conference center alone.
Is that million booking fees or sales tax?
They're sales tax estimates, gross sales tax estimates.
Those will go into the Star Bond and TIF and those districts.
So a portion of them will, unless they're dedicated taxes.
Okay, so the only portion of that tax that would come to the county would be the behavioral health tax.
Actually, it's bigger than that. There's a portion, of the 1%, only 0.56 of it goes to the Star Bond. I think
Okay.
that's because you have some dedicated debt.
I think
that the
that's the
taxes are-
city.
Maybe
That's
you and
the
I could
city.
talk about that
Yeah.
offline, try to
Yeah.
figure that one out.
Okay.
But yeah. Very good.
That doesn't impact people staying in hotels outside and things like that. So it's in a conference, there's the there's the event, but then there's the indirect, so to speak, of people.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, that million, does that count sales taxes from restaurants not in the district?
No, that's just the conference center, which was the
Gotcha.
question. There's a much broader picture across the board.
Anything else, commissioners? Maybe just one final comment. I appreciate the university's recognition that, you know, property tax is what funds services. And that is a new chapter from the university. And I just want to recognize that and appreciate that as you're thinking about how to grow our community, you're not just saying, hey, we've got all this land that can't be taxed. Well, thank you for that. I want to appreciate that. So anything else, commissioners? Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move on to our next agenda item, which is a fairgrounds parking lot repair project.
And I'll kick it off while Jimmy Wilkins, our Director of Buildings and Grounds and Maintenance, and Nolan Packard with Public Works come forward. Commissioners, last September, you approved a large project that had been in our capital improvement plan for a period of time to do a number of parking lots on a number of different county facilities. I got a urgent email from Jimmy yesterday morning related to the fairgrounds project, and specifically the improvements around Building 21. And I feel like it's important for me to speak for this team here. The fairgrounds has developed over time, and there aren't good plans on a lot of what was done at that space. It's a site that's been added to and taken away from and changed and modified over 50 years. So it is not surprising to me that when that team began to look at that parking lot, that they determined that they had some problems from their original core estimates. And I let you guys talk a little bit more about what you found when you started working on the parking lot outside of Building 21.
Okay, thanks, Sarah, and thanks, commissioners. I will start by telling you the head wound is not from banging my head against the wall because of this project. I also want you to know we've already completed 2 of the 3 sections of this project, which were the human service building parking lot and the parking lot at the juvenile detention center. Those are done. We're on the last phase, which is the fairgrounds. And as Sarah said, once the contractor moved in, milled off the 2 inches of existing asphalt, we found that the base material underneath is just really not substantial enough to go back with the planned additional 2 inches or new 2 inches of asphalt on top of it. What it's going to lead to is quickly a failing surface and a product that none of us will be proud of and will be replacing in several years. So because of that, I've been working with Nolan. Nolan and his team have just done me a huge favor assisting me with this building maintenance project. They didn't have to do it, but they sure stepped up. So they've been working with the contractor to come up with an idea. How do we fix this and do it right so we're not back here in a few years? So I'll let Nolan speak to the technical side of it, but essentially the base is inadequate and we need to step this up so we have a good product.
Hi, Commissioners. Nolan Packard with Public Works. As we started this project, as Sarah mentioned, we milled the asphalt off, and in doing so, we had trucks running around the project, and we had a truck right in front of Building 21 fall through the rest of the asphalt. It failed miserably, 12 to 18 inches. This is an area that the parking lot all drains down towards 2 area inlets, and all the water has been sitting there for years, and we found it. In addition, on both sides of Building 21, there are alleyways going back into the other side of the fairgrounds. Upon milling that asphalt, the underside is failing as well. We have requested that the contractor come in and mill additional depth of asphalt down to where we have now found more rock and subgrade that is failing again. So me and my team went and measured a lot of these areas and have computed what it would take to repair it adequately. So we are, like Jimmy said, not back anytime soon. We have not opened up 100% of this parking lot yet. So there is still an unknown balance out there. The requested 72,000 in addition money is roughly 15% of the original approved contract. That approved contract is $200,000 below the engineer's estimate already.
And in addition to that, in consultation with his team, in the past, the county commission has also granted that if additional, since we don't exactly know what's going to happen here, they've granted authority to me to approve up to 10% of any contract award to keep this
Yeah.
project moving. That's why we had to walk it on tonight as opposed to putting it on next week's agenda. The timing of this is very tight. We've got a lot of big events happening at the fairgrounds this summer. So it's important that we keep moving on this project. And so the motion in front of you also provides an additional 10% authorization if we need to complete the project.
So I got a question with the amount we approved tonight plus the 10%. It's still below the engineer's estimate.
Yes, and we have funds in our capital improvement program contingency to cover this additional cost. I'd be glad to report on this project to commissioners if we end up having to access those additional funds. I mean, I can put that in one of my weekly memos if we need to, but you all get you'll get a final report on this when we close out the CIP project, but that might not be till next year when you'd see that report. So I'd be glad to keep you all in the loop.
Oh, and I'm going to assume nobody was hurt when it failed. Okay,
That's right.
that's good news. If this had been a different time of year, that might, but we're very lucky there. Okay. Any other questions, commissioners? Okay, open it up for public comment. We'll take public comment on this item, and we may have more questions or comments afterwards. Is anyone here who'd like to provide public comment on this item? Anyone online, Sarah? Okay, bring it back to the commission for any further questions, comments, or motions.
I guess I have a question. So the asphalt that was milled off of that, is it able to be, churned back and reused there, or is it too contaminated with like the substrate that you found more shallowly than you thought?
For this, actually the maintenance and the fairgrounds is using the millings separately. So we are not replacing or reusing that into the new asphalt.
Okay, but it's being used elsewhere.
It is being used.
All right, thanks.
I got a question. Where'd you get that nice hat?
I love this hat.
It is a part of his uniform.
It is. We begged and begged for these hats and they finally got it for us.
I think we might need to establish a county commission uniform here real soon.
Yes.
Yes. Any other questions? Non-wardrobe related. All right. I'm happy to make a motion to revise the parking lot maintenance project budget to be increased by $72,290 to revise the total of $554,222.70 and give the county administrator authority to approve an additional 10% of the total project cost.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. All right, that ends our regular agenda this evening. We'll move on to appointments.
Commissioners, we did have a number of reappointments for the Food Policy Council that need to be confirmed. We don't have to do those tonight, but they did pass new bylaws and we need to get those confirmed. I can try to pull them up for you if you would like. If you feel comfortable making those, these are all folks that are currently serving, have been serving. We just need to reset them to the new terms.
And the reason for that is they rewrote their bylaws.
Correct.
So the terms changed and
Yes.
got modified a little bit.
And we changed the nature of the membership. So those,
Commissioners, I have the list here. Do we want more time on this, or do we think we can go ahead and approve it? I think speak up if you want more time.
I think they're all legacy people, and why not get it out of the way?
No more time needed.
No more time. Commissioner Willie, everybody okay? I'm going to do it as a full motion. We'll just do them rather than individual. I make a motion to appoint to the Food Policy Council or reappoint to the Food Policy Council Susie Mooney, Mackie Moore, Shelby Osborne, Natalia Lowther, and Ben Sykes.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, Sarah. Any other appointments? I don't think I saw any others. Okay. We'll move on to Commissioner or Administrator Miscellaneous. We typically start with Sarah's memo.
Commissioners, my memo is attached. There's some new dates coming up at the end of May related to behavioral health court graduations and the Sheriff's Corrections Academy and some open houses. So mark your calendars if you plan to attend those. Also, I included in the packet an update. The appraiser's office has done a ton of work to update the annual value notices. And I thought it was the way Brad showed it side by side might be interesting for commissioners to see. And we have an update on the Eudora Reinvestment Housing Incentive District that's included in there as well. Next week, commissioners, we do not have a 4 o'clock work session, but we will have a meeting and hopefully proceed with the bond sale. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have miscellaneous items?
I had just a few. I will be gone next Wednesday for the meeting, out of town at a conference, so I won't, and I'm not going to Zoom in for that one. So I'll see you all again on the 28th. And so right before that there's an event at Liberty Hall on May 27th, the Sacred Red Rock film event, which maybe we all received information about, but just wanted to note that I have that on my calendar and mention it for Robin's purposes for notice. And then soon after that, especially because we're skipping the June 4th meeting, I'm also planning to attend the Farm Bureau dinner, which there's frequently more than one of us at. So just wanted to mention those few dates.
Thank you for going to the Farm Bureau dinner. I always go, but I'm out of town that day, so I had to RSVP no.
I think also June 14th is another date we probably need to notice.
Yeah, you were all invited to attend the Juneteenth parade, so we'll go ahead and notice the parade if we have commissioners participating.
Commissioners, I attended today the local Area 1 workforce board's retreat out in Salina. I just have to tell you how impressed I am with that merger once it's happened and how well it's going. I think, so mind you, our area is now 79 counties. So I'm learning a ton from other counties. I do think we need to work to get someone from Douglas County on the workforce board. So there's an elected board, which I serve on, but they also have a workforce board. And so if you are thinking about it, I was going to reach out to our EDC partners and see if maybe they had somebody, but somebody who's it could be somebody like at Beasley Tech, it could be somebody in workforce, it could be a nonprofit. If you think you have somebody who, is very interested in developing our workforce or meeting employer needs, please let me know and I can pass that in. And I brought you all a packet that was provided that has lots of information. In some ways, I think what Workforce One and our local workforce center is doing for our community is really an unfortunate best kept secret, because they are really responsive to not only when layoffs happen, but also helping people find their right job and connecting them with employers. So I just wanted to give you that information. Anything else? All right, we are adjourned.